After leaving the dungeon, everyone cut the door and took turns guarding the entrance to the dungeon. The whole team rested after a fierce battle with the rat army. Kim Monkey asked Jong Han Young, did he admit defeat yet? Han Young replied, indifferently. Kim Chulmin heard on the phone and said, yes, it's a mutated monster, the squad members have already retreated from the bunker. Yes, first of all it was determined that there was one child. The team member suppressed it. Kim Minjun stood to the side and sniffed his body. Minjun's body emitted a rat odor. After sniffing, Minjun asked, "Ha?" As soon as Minjun smelled the bad smell, he immediately covered his nose, pulled his collar open. Chulmin was still standing on the phone. Yes, we would like to request the specialized team for aid. Han Young walked closer to Minjun, who was patting his armor to get rid of the smell, and said, this guy's front lines range from mosquitoes to monsters, how come there are no normal types? Han Young sat down and continued, hey, it's really thanks to you that we're still alive. When I first saw it, I was so scared that I couldn't move. After listening, Minjun also sat down next to Han Young and said, no, I'm sorry for rushing in. Han Young replied, what's the point of apologizing? Anyone who saw it would know that it was a sudden situation. If you don't take care of it quickly, it's up to you. Kwang Sik and Dong Jin almost had an accident. After speaking, Han Young remembered to ask, but are you still okay, are you not injured anywhere? Minjun nodded once. After answering the phone, Chulmin also approached and asked Minjun if he was really not hurt. Chulmin's eyes looked at Minjun firmly. Minjun replied, yes, I'm fine. Han Young sitting next to him thought to himself, is he really human? At this time, Chulmin held his head and sighed and said, when you return to the office, you will meet me to talk. Minjun replied, yes. After Chulmin asked about Minjun, he turned away. Han Young saw Chulmin acting like that and told Minjun that the squad leader was not in a good mood. Chulmin was standing next to the trunk of the car, thinking sadly about something. Right at the back of the car, Minji was talking on the phone and replied, yes, I understand. Minji saw Chulmin and immediately came forward and said, while escorting the team members back, no one was seriously injured. Dong Jin had just finished checking and was returning to the unit. Kwang Sik had a slight head injury, but he can return to the unit tomorrow. Chulmin just smiled slightly when he heard that information. Minji saw that and patted Chulmin on the shoulder. Chulmin could only sigh. Minji turned towards the resting soldiers. Minji shouted loudly, the second squad's attention, because of an unexpected situation, this attack on the dungeon will stop here. After everyone checked their belongings and prepared to return, the whole team said in unison and clearly. Returning to the unit, Minjun met Chulmin in the administrative room. Chulmin took out a clipboard of blank paper and a pen and gave it to Minjun and said, nothing else, I called you here for the report. Please describe a little bit the process by which you brought the monster here. Minjun picked up the pen and clipboard and thought to himself, what should I write? Could it be that because I couldn't kill him with a shield, I used my fist to knock it down? Who can believe it? Chulmin just came back to get a bottle of yogurt. Chulmin put the yogurt bottle on the table. Chulmin said, my vision was blocked just now so I couldn't see very accurately. I wonder if you took it down with your fist. Minjun heard Chulmin say that and held the pen tightly. Minjun smiled awkwardly and said, ha, that monster was too aggressive so I acted without thinking. Chulmin asked Minjun, what are your stats? Minjun replied, strength is 65, sensitivity is 60, Chulmin was surprised after hearing the stats. Chulmin thought to himself, a lieutenant like me has an average of just over 40 years old, a normal soldier, whose strength and agility exceeds 60. That's twice the level of average soldiers. Chulmin sat back in his chair and said, ha. Someone your size could have gone to Hunter Officer School, I feel so sorry. Min-jun wrote the report and thought that, yes, in the file it was written that he had dropped out of high school. After all, it would be difficult to enter officer school. Chol-min sat down and said to Min-jun, "Min-jun, your goal is to be a leader, why don't you think about going to university by taking the competency assessment exam? There are some types of programs, like starting from corporals or teaching assistants in the army. How about that? Let me find out for you." Min-jun scratched his face and said, "I don't like studying, getting promoted through achievements is enough." After listening, Chol-min just took a breath. Chol-min put his hands behind his head, sat comfortably in the chair and said, "Okay, the decision is up to you, I won't force you. If you change your mind, just tell me." Min-jun replied, "Thank you." "It's already late," Chol-min said, "let me finish the report, you just go back and rest. I won't forget your enthusiasm." Min-jun replied, "Yes, then I'll excuse you, loyal." Min-jun stood up and left. Chol-min sat blankly looking at his hat on the table. Chol-min called Min-jun. "Min-jun." Min-jun replied, "Soldier, Kim Min-jun." Chol-min said, "Today you saved the squad members' lives. Either way, the worst case scenario could happen. In fact, I was unable to reciprocate. Thank you." Min-jun smiled and replied, "It's just a natural thing." Chol-min saw Min-jun's expression and smiled. Min-jun walked out the door thinking, yes, of course it has to be done. Get trust, also get achievement points, more. Min-jun just sighed and thought, that's why. Later, Min-jun went to Kwang-sik and Dong-jin. Min-jun glanced at Kwang-sik who had a bandage on his head. Min-jun asked Kwang-sik, "Would you like to go to special training together with Binyut Lee Dong-jin?" Kwang-sik showed fear on his face and replied, "Yes." Min-jun questioned, "How did you know we trained here?" Dong-jin, standing next to Min-jun, was worried about something, hands clasped together continuously. Min-jun didn't wait for Kwang-sik to answer, so he pointed at Kwang-sik and asked, "No, moreover, why did he suddenly want to train with us?" Min-jun thought to himself, a scarred rich man. Kwang-sik faced the Min-jun's face was upset, unable to say anything. Kwang-sik hummed and said, "That's because it is." Kwang-sik immediately turned to Dong-jin, pointed at Dong-jin and said, "It must be you, Lee Dong-jin, your strength has increased a lot, now it seems more useful, isn't it, thanks to this training session?" So me too. This time I also thought about practicing." Min-jun heard Kwang-sik speak incoherently and tried not to laugh. Min-jun seriously asked Kwang-sik, "Do you think I will agree?" Min-jun said so, smiling happily. Min-jun asked Kwang-sik next, "Besides, everything has to be in order, right, soldier Kim?" Kwang-sik. After hearing Min-jun's words, Kwang-sik looked worried but gritted his teeth. Kwang-sik, calm down. Kwang-sik bowed his head and said, "Thank you for saving me, and I'm sorry, Dong-jin." Dong-jin didn't know him, so he stopped me. "No, why did you do that, soldier Kim?" Kwang-sik. Kwang-sik put his hand on his chin and said, "I'm sorry for what I did in the past. Although I don't know if you will accept it, I honestly want to train with you. I have my own reasons, so the target is the deputy officer." Dong-jin heard Kwang-sik apologize and replied, "I know." Then Dong-jin turned to Min-jun and asked, "Is it okay to train together?" Min-jun didn't answer. Dong-jin asked again, "Senior soldier Kim Min-jun?" Min-jun coldly replied, "Of course. No, Privates Lee Dong-jin." Dong-jin and Kwang-sik were startled when they heard it. Kwang-sik showed his guilt on his face and said, "Okay, what I did during my time in prison, so of course everyone won't feel comfortable. Anyway, thank you, thanks to you too I'm alive." Kwang-sik turned away and said, "Then I'm leaving." Dong-jin saw that Kwang-sik was leaving sadly and called back, "Ah, soldier Kim." Kwang-sik. Suddenly Min-jun spoke up, "There was one condition." Kwang-sik immediately turned around. Min-jun said, "Pigeon." Kwang-sik doesn't understand. Kim Min-jun continued, "From now on, Within 24 hours, if you walk while imitating a pigeon, I will consider it once. After hearing the conditions, Kwang-sik got angry, his face turned red, he gritted his teeth and said, "What do you say?" Min-jun immediately asked, he didn't want to. Kwang-sik changed his mouth shape. Kwang-sik angrily called a pigeon, "Goo goo goo." Kwang-sik kept making pigeon noises. Dong-jin saw that and wanted to stop and called out. The senior soldier was hiding from Kwang-sik, and Min-jun, standing behind Dong-jin, smiled cunningly. Min-jun's smile was extremely cunning, and Min-jun thought to himself, one more person. One night in the world of Iskard. There was the sound of a vehicle transporting something. The farmer pulled a cart containing something wrapped in cloth in the dark of night and approached the altar of transmission. At the altar of transmission, the holy woman was already standing there waiting. The holy woman stood with her back to the man in the field and said, "It's been hard for you." The man in the field didn't say anything. The saint turned back to look at the man in the field. The saint asked, "Do you have anything to say?" The man in the field hesitated. The rickshaw man walked up to the rickshaw and asked, how long was he going to be like this? The saint stepped forward. Passing by the man, he walked towards the cart and said, "Let's see." The holy woman stands in front of a cart wrapped in cloth. The saint lifted the cloth and looked inside. Inside the veil revealed a purple gaze, seemingly containing a lot of dark energy. The saint closely observed the object in the cage. The man standing behind the saint saw this and called out, "Saint." The holy woman cast a spell towards the teleportation array. The saint said, "This is a gift sent to that guy, who left this place on his own." The man in the field heard that and asked, "But?" The saint turned around with a scary expression and said, "No matter what I do, I still haven't seen enough. On Earth, the special training team is digging the ground." Cho Tae-uk was digging and complaining. It hasn't been long since he returned from the dungeon and he's already being forced to dig. Why is it so miserable at the end of the year? Kim Mun-ki behind him was also sweating and said, "Well, I'm still thinking that this battlefield is really for confronting monsters." Mun-ki looked at Chul-min and asked, wondering if she could help. Tae-uk replied, "I don't know," just as the transport vehicle arrived. Mun-ki and Tae-uk were surprised to see the car coming. On the cart, iron stone blocks arrived. The team members saw this and immediately ran to unload the iron stones. Mun-ki stood on top and said, "Oh, it's true that they are servants, the iron stones have been delivered." Dong-jin and Tae-uk saw that. Sorrow. Min-ji and Sung-ho stood on the cart delivering ice to the team members below. The team members carried it to the side of the fence and put it down. Kwang-sik carried the rock and breathed heavily. Kwang-sik said, "Servant is the word we use together as a group. This is called ironstone because we don't know if it is stone or iron. This only looks like that, but it is extremely heavy and extremely solid. That's why I used this to build a battlefield. Partly because it's made from a special mineral found in dungeons, its name might have been." Min-jun next to him asked attentively, "Huh?" Min-jun held two boulders on his shoulders and asked again, "What did you say to me?" Kwang-sik saw Min-jun carrying two iron rocks at the same time and it was like two rocks fell on his head. "Ah." Kwang-sik said, "No, I didn't say anything to you." Team members are still actively moving ice from the truck. Kwang-sik and Dong-jin had just put down the rocks and stood up, when they saw Min-jun carrying 4 rocks at once, whistling as he walked. Kwang-sik looked scared. After a while, after moving all the iron stones down, Min-ji shouted loudly to announce, "Come on, everyone rest for 10 minutes. While everyone was resting and talking, Min-ji approached Chul-min and called out, "Squad leader." Min-ji said, "Just now when I went to the division headquarters to receive supplies, I heard about this. In the area related to our 104th division, a dungeon appeared that was suspected to be an empty dungeon." When the whole team heard Min-ji say that, They immediately turned to Minji, and asked again. Kim Chong-tae asked Minji, really? Chong-tae and Tae approached Minji, looked pitiful and asked, aren't you kidding? Deputy Squad Leader, Sergeant Minji, that's not possible. Chong-tae hugged Minji's hand and shouted, this time if he comes in again, it will be 3 times already for Otoy and Soldier Joe. Tae also hugged Minji's leg and asked, it's really not right. Minji immediately said, still under investigation, so calm down, these guys. Min-jun saw the noise and immediately paid attention. Kwon-sik sat across from Min-jun and looked at Min-jun. Kwon-sik saw Min-jun bewildered and said, empty dungeon. The size inside the dungeon is larger than the standard, although the number and variety of monsters inside the dungeon exceeds the standard. But in the case of a dungeon, there is no boss monster or highly dangerous monster, so in the hunter world it is called an empty dungeon. Because the empty dungeon is a dungeon with a favorable environment for hunters to gain experience in real combat, the army will conduct division-level training there before allowing actual combat soldiers to invade the corresponding dungeon. That's the infamous hunter mobility training. Min-jun listened to Kwon-sik and asked, who have you been talking to all this time? When Kwon-sik heard what Min-jun said, his face was blank. Kwon-sik looked away and thought to himself, it was just because someone was curious. Min-jun turned to look at Minji and thought, hunter mobility training. But now it's not the training we need. Minji's side is still surrounded by Chong-tae and Tae screaming, Sergeant Minji, farm tools are here. Ah no, we hate training. Oh my god, I just came back from the dungeon. Minji saw the 2 people Chong-tae and Tae clinging to each other and was annoyed, her face covered in veins, thinking, this is really annoying. Kim Chul-min only spoke up now, even though it's still a division-level training guys, this is an opportunity to gain a lot of accumulated points. Minji is angry, pinching Tae-yukei's face. When Min-jun heard Chul-min say that, he remembered and thought, ah, that's right. Accumulated points. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of point-scoring cases on the front line. I came to this place really wisely, it's great. Min-jun was happy, looking down at his shadow on the ground, a face appeared, eyes and mouth radiating dark purple light. Min-jun looked at that face and thought, why are you there? Min-jun immediately stepped on that face. Min-jun looked at Minji's group of people and was wary. Chong-tae and Tae were still begging Minji, we don't need accumulated points, it's the end of the year, why are we so miserable? Min-jun breathed a sigh of relief and thought, luckily no one saw. Min-jun touched that face, wondering, what is this, what's wrong? Min-jun immediately saw something. 2 soldiers talk to each other, the man asks, asking for aid, the woman replies, yes, it's an irregular monster. Is a request for aid coming from the Gate Investigation Committee that arose in the Old Yang? The man asked, did the dungeon arise in a military area? The woman clutching her hat in her hand replied, yes, not a place of residence for civilians. But 2 of the investigators suddenly discovered that the strange phenomenon that had begun to be reported not long ago was perhaps a dungeon that needed urgent exploration. The man said, assigning the regular army to control the area as before, letting the hunters in Yongu retreat first, giving priority to the dungeons that arise in Hong Chun's residential area. Everyone came in, the woman replied, it was clear. When Min-jun received this information, he was immediately stunned. Min-jun then brightened again. Min-jun leaned on his hands next to his shadow. Then stomped on that face. Min-jun thought to himself, no matter what, I have to use my vacation just once.